All right, Charlotte, are you there? Okay. Charlotte, are you there? Now we're co-hosting, so we're good. Okay, so I'm just going to wait one more minute before we start the webinar, just to allow people to come in to the room.
To close my door in case anyone.
Yeah, go ahead. Mhm. Okay. So we are going to go ahead and get started in the interest of time, just so that we are able to start on time, like we said, and also finish on time. Thank you so much for joining the webinar. Today, we are going to talk about the operational setup of a new law firm. So we're going to get into the details here right now. And joining on this webinar as my co-host is Charlotte Merritt. I am Antonia Berry. We're going to do a quick introduction here to get us kicked off. Like I mentioned before, my name is Antonia Berry. I am a law firm business developer and the CEO of Strategy Academy. I have been in the industry for about 20 years now, serving international and national firms here in the United States, where I work with attorneys that are either one, starting their own practice and are needing support and help to develop that practice that they're starting on their own. Or perhaps it could be that there is a larger practice, a larger firm that's wanting to level up, that's wanting to develop the business, all with the view of wanting to increase their revenue. I am based in Atlanta, Georgia. However, I support clients across the entire United States. My contact details are included here in the event that you would like to reach out to me after this webinar. They will be again included at the end, but just wanted to highlight that here. I'm now going to pass it over to Charlotte so that she's able to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her background as well as her company.
Hi, I'm Charlotte Merritt, founder of Opps, which is Operations, People, Process, and Solutions. And I got into this probably by being really overwhelmed by chaos from a very early age. And I've always enjoyed helping companies put structure in place, put systems in place. So that's what brought me to Opps. I work with clients in the United States, got clients in California, got clients up the East Coast. So I really enjoy having a diversity of clients and law firms that I work with. And I think my favorite part about operations is watching the revenue operations grow. My contact information is also right there on the screen. And I'm excited for how operations and revenue and business development come together.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Charlotte. So as we kick off the webinar, and we're now going to get into the actual content. If you're on this webinar, I just wanted to highlight who this webinar is for. Of course, it's for attorneys that are launching a law firm, because as you may or may not know, starting a law practice requires very specific things to be done on the operational side. Of course, on every side, because just due to the nature of the business, but definitely for sure on the operation side. Um, for small firm founders, perhaps you might have already founded a firm. However, you need to get your operations perhaps adjusted. They need to be looked after. There need to be changes. There might be kinks in it that you might want to work on or focus on at this time. And then again, this is pretty much the same as the first point, but attorneys leaving big law or other partnerships that they're perhaps a part of to start their own practice, whether it's going to be a one-man show or it's going to be multiple attorneys that are going to be getting together to start this new practice. The content that's going to be covered here is going to be a good foundation for what is needed on the operations side. What attendees will learn. As I mentioned before, we're going to highlight operations for the most part today of starting a new law practice. However, the very beautiful thing that comes together in partnerships, just like the partnership that I have here with Charlotte, is that we're able to give not only just the operations side, but also to highlight the business development side and how those worlds intersect within a law practice. So today, if you're an attendee here on this webinar, whether you're here live or you're going to watch and listen to the replay later, what you will learn is how to properly set up a law firm operationally. As I mentioned before, there's a very specific way for which law firms have to be set up in order for them to be compliant with the state bar that is in the state that you're in. And they also need to function that way to stay compliant as well. So the setup will set the stage for how things look for you going forward. And that's what we're going to be talking about here today. And of course, this is an hour for us to cover as much ground as we can, and there's always more to cover. But like I mentioned before, we are going to include our contact details again at the end so that you're able to reach out to us to talk more. So the second bullet here is how to build a firm that attracts clients immediately. That's where you will see the overlap between operations and business development, because they cannot exist independently on their own. They have to come together. At the end of the day, even though you're starting a law practice, yes, it is a business. And then another thing that we're going to cover here and that you're going to learn are about the common startup mistakes to avoid. And we're going to talk about those towards the end and highlight them as much as we can, the things that we have seen in our time that just causes a bit of a disaster for our clients and want you to avoid just due to the nature of what happens when they come into play. I wanted to take a moment here to talk about the signature program that was recently created called Build Your Own Practice Blueprint. This signature program is a part of the Strategy Academy offering. This particular program allows attorneys who are starting their own law practice to have a framework that they step into so that they're not playing the guessing game. This particular program lays the foundation for attorneys to get set free from the billable hamster wheel, where you're just billing on a, ongoing basis. You're not really building relationships with your clients. You're not practicing law the way that you want to practice law. And most importantly, you're not owning your client relationships. So this signature program allows an attorney who is ready to start their own law practice to make that jump, but making that jump in a way that is strategic, with a proven system and framework in order for the attorneys to move into practicing law and launching their own law practice. This framework is, like I said, active building out of a law practice. It's not theory, it's actual execution. It's focused on execution. And within this program, you're going to have one-on-one coaching sessions with me to walk you through each corner that needs to be built out to ensure that your practice is set up the correct way. Charlotte, who has joined this webinar here as my co-host, is also a part of that program. And you will see once you sign on to that program that she's one of the individuals that you can reach out to for resources, even after you have launched your new law practice. Lastly, I want to mention that this program is self-paced. You will go at your own speed. We will not tell you to go faster or slower at any point. It's all about you. It's all about how fast or slow you want to go. I do have to say that I've had some clients who have stepped into this program and blown through it in a couple of weeks. Others have taken their time because they needed to process while they're wrapping up their time at their existing role, or perhaps they needed to take time to raise capital. But again, this goes at your speed. And lastly, I wanted to mention that the QR codes that are over to the right, the top one at the top is going to give you information about the program so that you understand the integral parts of how it works and how it's set up. And then the second QR code will allow you to book a confidential consultation in my calendar, where we have a one-on-one conversation about where you are right now, where you're trying to get to, and to determine whether or not you are now in the present state and ready to make that leap. in that consultation, I will give you an honest and professional opinion on where you are and perhaps determine, that you might be ready right now, or perhaps you might need to put some building blocks in place before you launch and jump into launching your own law practice. So let's get into the actual content here. I'm going to let Charlotte kick this off because this is so much of her area. And of course, you're going to hear from the two of us. We're going to be talking a lot about all of the things, but I'm going to let her jump in here because this touches directly into her space.
So the fantastic thing about working with law firms and lawyers is you guys understand so much and have studied so hard and spent so many years building in your level of expertise in your area of law. Undergrad, grad school, being a law clerk, being a junior associate, senior associate, you've worked your way up. You're an incredible lawyer. But what I didn't mention was going to business school or having an MBA or working in a grind that is a financial institution, because when you start your own firm, you're bringing so much expertise about the law, but it's a business. So suddenly you're running a business with business needs, with business rules and regulations that are so different from the law, but oddly enough, set by lawyers. So that's a really fun juxtaposition. And so when I look at these law firms that I've watched grow, there's three pillars that really make a launch successful. Operations, which is a huge umbrella, but we'll go through as much of it as we can. How did you set up? What habits did you form? What infrastructure is in? What procedures have you memorialized? Business development, which is not my department at all, but I can build you a beautiful infrastructure. I can build you amazing SOPs, but if you don't have clients, they don't really help you out. And then the third pillar being financial discipline. Okay, you've got the operations, you've got the clients. What are we going to do with that money, and how are we going to make sure that it helps the firm grow? So some things that we have seen in our years about why new firms struggle in the first year, 2 years, is the amount of responsibility that now falls to you. You were incredibly responsible getting through law school and, clerking and your first couple of jobs, but what didn't fall to you in those roles were the day-to-day. I mean, I'm talking, who makes the coffee in the morning? If you work for a big firm, someone else thought about that. Who turns the lights on? Who locks the door? Who shreds the documents? Suddenly, as a law firm owner, and it's, make the joke of making your own coffee, but truly, from making the coffee to finding the clients to paying the taxes to renewing with the Secretary of State, suddenly these are all business actions that fall to you. So new firms struggle because they don't have that blueprint, that strategy academy behind them saying, let's set reminders for all of these things. We're going to think about them so you can do them automatically. And I would say there's also the misconception that good lawyers automatically get clients. Antonia, is that true?
No, that does not happen that way. Because while you are an excellent attorney, you're a technician, right? You are practicing the law, you're applying the law, you're serving clients in that way. That doesn't mean that you're going to get clients. There's an element of business development that needs to happen in order for you to even attract clients. To begin with. And even prior to that, if you're looking for clients on your own, you need to first of all determine who these people are. You need to find them, then you need to figure out how you're going to get contact with them if you don't know them already. And then you need to build that relationship up and then build up the trust in order for them to trust you. And then it moves into a client that you have acquired. So just because you're an amazing attorney, you're a technician, you do very, 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 very good work, that doesn't mean that you're going to automatically have clients. It doesn't work that way. Of course, in the perfect world, people would just spread the word about the great work that you do and do all the marketing for you, but that's not reality. You have to actively go out and network. You have to build relationships. And then after building the relationships, you have to build trust. And there's a whole lot of other steps that perhaps we can't even cover in this webinar. That's an entire completely separate conversation that needs to happen specific to client acquisition, and how that process works, that tells us what that process looks like and how you actually get clients.
And I've seen new firms come in with clients. They came in, they left their firm, they were allowed to bring their 10 or so clients,
Mm-hmm.
but those cases wrap up and then you need more. So
Correct.
yes, you might be
Exactly.
bringing clients. No, those clients aren't staying with you forever. But with operational setup, we can ensure that we find the new clients, keep new clients. And there's a lot with business setup. So you have to have a name. Most law firms I've seen come through use their name, which is great. You already have it, you know it, you're going to remember it. Fantastic. For the sake of a fake example, I'm going to put together Merritt Law Firm. Well, is it just me? Do I want it to always be just me? Do I want my assets exposed? Do I want to pay the money for an S corp? Do I want a PLLC? Am I coming in with a partner? Do I want to leave the door open for a partner later? So this is something that you can sit down. If you were a business attorney, fantastic. You've already made your decision. You know what you're doing. But maybe you were with a workers' comp practice before or family law. You want to really think about what structure you're going to want 3 years from now and set that up today. Ideally, if you're starting a firm, you already have some licensing and bar, but now you have to think, hey, wait, I might not have an admin to remind me that in Texas, I have to renew every 2 years and take X number of CLEs to do it. So make sure you have your ducks in a row. What are the licensing and bar requirements and insurance considerations? When you work for another firm, your cyber policy, your malpractice, your errors and omissions, all of these insurances, all of these protections are built in for you, and you don't have to think about them. And yes, you can go online and just get insurance. That's fantastic. I don't recommend it. I recommend working with in your state or states, if you're past the bar in multiple states, a licensed broker who's going to talk through, well, how do you store your information? Are you putting everything on your desktop? Please don't. Are you using OneDrive? Are you using a Google-based email system, which I know we're going to go in the weeds because yes, now you have to create a website and you have to create an email account and you have to have the structures and the renewals for those. But with the insurance, I'm going to go back to that. How is your data stored? How are you protecting your clients? Are you in a state that needs workers' comp? In Georgia, I want to say it's 3 employees. It used to be 5. Texas is the Wild West of workers' comp. California, if you're breathing, you need insurance. So making sure you know what the considerations and requirements are for your state. Operating agreements, back to that first bullet point. Is it just you? Fantastic. But are you bringing in a partner? If so, we really need to put that on paper. And the closer you are to your partner, if that is your best friend or spouse, the tighter those agreements need to be. I have a favorite quote from a former colleague that she with the tightest contract wins. You're lawyers, you know this. And then I dabbled a minute ago about this. What does your technology look like? At your big firm, you guys might have had the most robust Clio or my case, you know, software built out to the nth degree. And you didn't have to think about it, it just magically showed up for you. If you were in charge of bringing in your own clients, you might have had the most robust sales force in the world for a CRM. Intake might not have been done by you. You might have brought a new client, handed that off to your admin, and then magically started the law work. Well, now you need an intake system. You need to be able to track everyone and have they returned the contract? Have they paid the retainer? Have they signed this? How can I communicate with my clients? Am I going to text message them? Oh, but in California, you can't do that before 8 a.m. Knowing the platform you're going to use, making sure it's secure, and beyond secure, transparent. So if anyone looks back at your files, they see every communication you've done, which brings us back to security. Is that data safe? Are you only transmitting data through Dropbox, through share file? How are we going to do this? It's overwhelming. I'm overwhelmed thinking about all the ways to do this. Work with someone, get through it, and get the software that works best for you. Do you have a Mac? Great, let's use Clio. Do you not have a Mac? Great, let's use Smokeball. Oh, you're in construction? Let's use Carrot. So finding the right tech and not getting too much and really using that tech correctly. So that is the scary beginnings of the infrastructure of a law firm. After that, so moving into kind of the operational setup and building the firm infrastructure, I mentioned that you might have had somebody at your firm who handled a lot of this. If you're going out on your own and you don't have an administrative assistant or a legal assistant or even a paralegal, a lot just fell on your shoulders. So what is intake? How do you define it? Some firms, intake is after they've signed the agreement. Sometimes intake is, oh my gosh, I have a new lead. I build a workflow design so there's no questions about who does something later. Now, if it's just you, amazing. You do it all. That makes these workflows really easy. But if you're coming in with these firms and maybe you're established and there's 5 of you and suddenly who does what comes into play, building the workflow. Okay, I have an intake person. They are going to follow up with our leads. They're going to engage with them. They're going to send the engagement agreements. They're going to send the retainer request through, oh, LawPay change names, 8 a.m. LawPay, which used to be 8 a.m., or however you want to do that. Who's going to notify whoever's working the case, the lead attorney or the responsible attorney? Who's going to make sure all time entry is done correctly and not on, please, not on sticky notes or in your brain? How are you going to make sure bills are out timely? Who's going to follow up on those bills? It's really uncomfortable to work. Let's make the example of family law. It's a really emotional, touchy time for anybody. Do you also want to be the person? Hey, I know we have court tomorrow, but you haven't paid your bills, so you don't want to be that person. Putting those systems in place, I call them SOPs. It just means standard operating procedures or a how-to manual. So here's my favorite example. I was working with a busy attorney and it was fine. All the information was in her head. She hired one associate. It's fine. She trained for one associate and shared the information in her head, most of it. Some of it was still stuck inside. Hired another associate, same process. Well, now we're at a pivot point where this firm needs to grow, and this owner wants to be out doing business development, wants to be working with the Antonias of the world, saying, let me find the right clients. But she can't. She's got to go back and train somebody because the information's in her head. So I went in, it's a really mean word, but I extracted information, put together a how-to manual, found some places we could be more efficient now that the firm had grown. So training became really quick. Hey, we're going to get you onboarded. And the owner didn't have to do all the onboarding because somebody else had a how-to manual, had those standard operating procedures, knew where they were stored. You can't just write them and say, oh, they're in OneDrive. OneDrive will eat stuff, I tell you, but having that file naming convention I mentioned earlier, I got into this because I like OCD and organization. What is the file naming procedure? Last name dot first name dot date dot your initials. How do you want to save this? And then do it the same way every single time. When you come home, do you put your keys in the same place? I don't. That's my one flaw, but you should. Do you take your shoes off and put them somewhere? Those same very basic ideas make or break law firms. Do you know where the files are? Do you know how to find a file? Do you know how to extract information? So I will stop there because I can go on for hours on this topic. Because once you have that infrastructure, you've literally designed the firm for growth. So I have to
Yes,
stop talking now.
agreed. Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned before, this is a very wide and broad topic. We're going to try to cover as much as we can here in the short hour that we have. And we're always open for questions after if you have any. But now I'm going to talk about designing the firm for growth in the business development space, and then carrying that over into the operations space. We are in this at the end of the day for our clients, our law practices that we're working along with to grow and to make money, right? That's what business is all about. This is not talking about charity, this is talking about a business, right? So defining the firm's market position is where that growth is going to first put its first stake down in the ground. And typically, where this starts is determining what practice area you are going to be in instead of doing this general practice type approach. I do know, many years ago when I first entered the legal marketing and business development space, there were a lot of generalists around. And perhaps during that time, it was okay to be a generalist, and it really didn't, hurt or harm at all. And you can actually make and build up a practice that way because technology was not what it is today, and people didn't have to be so practice focused. However, today practice focus is very important because you have to ideally carve out your space of what you're going to be, who you're going to serve in a way that's going to put you on the map, but using your practice focus to do that to start. So whatever practice area you decide to be in, you need to really carve that out and then carve out a space within for which you are going to develop the practice in. So going with a practice focus is a much better approach than going general. I do have some clients who started in the general practice, even though that's not what I recommend. I recommend your focus practice. And they just had a much longer runway to establish the firm and to really solidify who their clients are, who their target clients are. And that's why, or one of the reasons why it's best to focus on a specific practice. The next point that I'm going to talk about here is your ideal client profile. Of course, your ideal client, you often hear about talking about who's your avatar and what do they look like and what are the characteristics of your avatar and all of that. But I will take this a step further. When you're in the space of developing the business, you need to look at what the pain points are of your ideal client. It's not just who they are. What problems are you going to be solving for these clients? Because when you're able to drill down that step further in understanding what it is that you're solving for clients, that helps you to find them a lot easier. And it also helps them to identify with the problems and then leading and linking that back to you as a law practice, as an attorney. So this exercise of ideal client profiling, which is also included an entire module about that within the practice blueprint program. This exercise goes beyond the typical of like just finding out what the demographics are of these individuals, but instead dealing with what are their pain points, what are you solving, and using that in your messaging to attract the client to you. Now here, I talked a little bit before about, being practice focused. And now I'm going to take that a step further by talking about the market differentiation. So obviously there are going to be other practices, other law practices within your same practice area. However, when you're within a practice area, you need to differentiate yourself in that space. And one of the ways to do that is to differentiate your market. For example, if there are two attorneys that are practicing in the trust space, essentially they do the same thing. However, to differentiate themselves, what they do is they talk about the ideal clients and the pain points that their ideal clients are facing. While their pain points may be similar, they're going to look a little bit different for perhaps somebody who has a higher net worth as opposed to one who has, just under perhaps $1 million. So when comparing somebody who's going to be looking for a trust attorney, looking at what the market differentiators are of one attorney as opposed to other will help the client to know exactly who they should be selecting and what they should be looking for in the attorney that they're looking for to help them build out their trust. So using that example, just apply that to what you need to do in order for you to design your firm for growth. Figuring out what those differentiators are and building that into your brand, which we're going to talk about a little bit next, is going to be key. So once you build out what those differentiators are, you then put that into your brand positioning. And I recommend you do that from day one. Do not wait until after you have launched months later to start thinking about, well, how do I position, my practice? All of this stuff, the design of it, which is deciding your focus area and meaning your practice area, knowing who your ideal clients are, understanding and carving out what your market differentiators are, and then positioning your brand in the market should all be things that are done on day one and not as an afterthought to designing your law practice. And now when we talk about the foundational pieces of building your practice and designing your practice, we need to include the business development foundation, because without business development, you are really not going to be able to have a practice because you don't have any clients. You don't have any way of getting clients, right? So at a very early stage, we start talking about relationship mapping.
Which
And
is my
by
favorite word, by the way, mapping and
yeah,
frameworks. I'm like, all right.
exactly. So this is going to be something that's you're going to see is going to touch the operations side as well, because you're going to hear Charlotte talk about how the CRM plays into this. But I'm going to touch on this like quickly so that she can then jump in, right? So the relationship mapping piece is not just about who you know. It's about who in your network knows somebody in their network that can be referred to you. So it's like a spider web, right? So it's not just about, oh, well, I knew that client, or, that was my past client. People who are not your clients are also a part of your map. Because if they're doing something perhaps, within your industry, and they might not directly send legal work to you from their work, they might know somebody who would send work to you, or who they would refer you to, would essentially make up a part of your map. So LinkedIn is one of those places where this happens, and I'm going to touch a little bit on LinkedIn soon as well. But this is where you can go behind the scenes and find out who is connected to who, how the map's all connected, who knows who can introduce you to people. And that way you have a bit of a map of how you're going to reverse engineer how these relationships are going to map back to you. Existing network activation is another piece of this. Existing relationships that you have within your network can also be activated, even though, like I said before, these individuals might not be the individuals who directly instruct you or who hire you. Their contacts, because they have contacts, will be a referral base for you, because they can send work to you in that way. And this is how we create this referral ecosystem, where they might not be the person directly, but they know somebody who knows somebody. And then there's always this like 1 degree of connection that exists somewhere. So that is why we tell attorneys, when you're first starting a law practice, do not limit who you talk to. Talk to lots and lots of people. And even before you decide to start your own law practice, I recommend that you embed this into your business development activities, because once you start mapping out who's connected to who at a very early age, even before you start your law practice, you already have a head start. So that way, when you're starting your law practice, you can just go back to your database of people that you know, and you can start connecting the dots there and start talking about your new practice, because you've already built the foundation. And my favorite piece is a strategic partnership piece, because I love partnerships, just like what I have here with Charlotte and I. We're partners in this, where we collectively support attorneys in different areas of their business, but bring a wealth of knowledge. This can still apply in your practice as well, where you're aligning your relationships and strategic partnerships and being able to serve the same clients as partners, and being able to serve the clients, which then elevates your value. And the foundation of your practice is then built on being more than just an attorney for the client, but instead you are of high value because you have an ecosystem of individuals who can also help the client at a later date with something that might not even be related to the type of work that you do. So building out this foundation of, business development, this is what the architectural piece looks like as it relates to business development, and the foundation of it as well, building on top of that, that you need to consider, because without this, you really have nothing to activate. You have to have a starting point for where you're going to start to develop the business based on relationships and based on an ecosystem of referrals.
But you
Charlotte,
have
you
to
want to come jump
document
in
it.
here?
I have to chime in. I'm like, but you have to document it. You
Oh,
memorized pages of documents for law school and you passed
mhm,
a bar, and that's amazing. Your brain is very powerful. You have to document this. I gave a referral. I got a referral.
mhm.
And you have to build a system. Oh, I'm really good friends with Charlotte. I'm going to give her a referral. No, of course I'm going to think about her. No, your grocery list just popped up. Document it. If you haven't, I call them touch points. If you haven't had a touch point with someone in 3 months, it's time to reach out. Hey, we haven't gotten
Mhm.
coffee in a while. We should get coffee if you want to be casual. Or, hey, I haven't given you a referral in a few months. Let's connect and let's see where I can
Mhm.
find you one. And I know this is about you getting business, but I assure you there's a book. It's called Giver's Gain. Every networking organization on the planet is basically off the consideration that humans like to reciprocate. So that relationship ecosystem, document it, make it intentional, make it feel
Mhm.
natural, document it, and then you have the data. When Antonia talks about the someone who knows a someone who knows a someone, that happens a lot. So you want to be in the room with that person and you don't know who they are if you haven't documented. Sorry, I'm done. Soapbox about documentation.
Thanks, Charlotte. So then let's get into the brand development basics because you're going to need a brand in order for you to be recognizable. You heard Charlotte mention before about your naming considerations, and I totally agree with her because when you're talking about what you're going to name this firm, you need to be thinking in the future, not just for where you are right now. The rule of thumb that I provide to clients is think about, 5 years from now, do you want to still be a one-man show? Or do you want to consider adding perhaps a partner? Some say yes and some say no. But regardless of what the answer is, do you want to always appear to look like a one-man show to clients? Typically, the answer to that is no, because after putting on in all of these years of work, you want to appear to be bigger because you are going to want to go after bigger matters. And if you add partners to it as well, it just looks a little bit janky if the firm's named after you and you have all these people under you and then people are not really sure, is this a one-man show, but they look like they have more people. This goes back to the messaging piece. So when you're naming your firm, think about what you want to do, not just for today but forward. Like, what do you want it to look like? What do you want it to be? This then leads into the messaging clarity. Like, what is the messaging that you want centered around who you are as an attorney? Yes. So that's your individual branding and the clarity of the messaging about you. And of course, that is going to flow across into the makeup of your firm and what your firm's culture is going to be when you first start. But again, taking a step back and understanding that today is today, yes, but we need to be thinking in the future. Think about what that messaging is going to need to convert into in the event that you add partners going forward. So be mindful of what you put in your messaging today and think about it being convertible into a larger firm later. Now, website priorities are, a thing where people can get just so entrenched in this piece where they get lost and they spend way too much time here. But I like to say this: when you're getting started in your own law practice, especially when it's just you starting in the beginning, try to stay under 5 pages of website pages on your website, because anything beyond that, you've just made things way too complex, right? The rule of thumb is to, yes, have a homepage, absolutely. And then have an about us page where you get highlighted if you're the only attorney. And of course, if you have others, you add them there as well. Perhaps you might have a paralegal that you want to feature there. That's fine too. And then you might want to include some other details about perhaps, your mission statement, whatever, completely up to you, but have that about us page. The next thing that you want to talk about is going to be your practice area, your actual area of practice. And this is where you're going to put the messaging and you're going to put the content that's going to talk specifically about the clients that you help. And the messaging has to be tailored towards the individuals that you're going after. So, for example, I talked earlier about two trust clients having two separate client bases and what they look like. Make your messaging tailored so that it reaches, touches, and has an impact on the actual targets that you're after. Do not speak in your content to an audience that you're not after. Align it with who you're after so that it speaks to them, it speaks to what their needs are and the problems that you are going to specifically solve for that group of people. LinkedIn presence. This goes along with your website. When the website's created, LinkedIn has to exist at the same time. Not just LinkedIn for your personal page, but we also need to consider a business LinkedIn page. Those are two different things. Your business needs to have its own presence with you attached to it. Messaging, yes, can flow across the two. However, the two of them need to independently exist, and the messaging needs to go across them. Here's why. In the business development space, as it relates to LinkedIn, more than anything else, yes, people will find out about your firm and find out about your practice, but it starts with you, your identity, who you are, what you do, your practice, and your messaging, your personal branding is what's going to take the client, the prospective client, the people who are interacting with your profile into your business. So it has to start with your presence and then roll into the content that's on your LinkedIn page. And then they go hand in hand together where they're always updated and they're speaking the same language. However, bear in mind that most of your contacts that are going to be on your business page will most likely come from your personal page. So start there, yes, having your own personal page, but once that website gets built and it's live, your LinkedIn page should be live as well for the business. Reputation building early is also key because this is what's going to come through on your messaging. What are you known for? What is in your reputation? Like, what do you do? A lot of speaking? Do you have a specific belief or like key part of your practice area that you drill home on? Whatever you're known for, use LinkedIn, use your website, use your messaging to build up that reputation at a really early stage, because it's going to carry for a very long time. It's going to help you develop the brand, develop the business, and it's going to be the very first start and stake in the ground for how you are going to be talking and messaging to your clients. And then we're going to move in now to the first 90 days growth plan. This is going to be, a very high level version of it, but we'll give you as much as we can. And Charlotte, I know this is going to be an area you're going to chime in on because this touches a lot of what you cover for the operations side. But the first 90 days are critical. These are the first 90 days of growth, and you need to be able to, grow your visibility. You need to have lots of visibility in this space so that your prospective clients know who you are, they know the space that you're in, and then that helps them to know what to reach out to you for or perhaps to send to you. This not only works in the digital space for social and LinkedIn and websites, but think about also your networking, right? Because you need to be networking, you need to be connecting with individuals because those individual relationships are going to be the bedrock for your practice. That's where things are going to start. In knowing that, and having lots of visibility, that just builds up the momentum for you, where clients or prospective clients are seeing a lot more of you. They're seeing what you're doing. And then, of course, marrying that up with your digital presence and having those two align is going to be key in how you develop and grow your practice. Thought leadership can come in a number of different ways, but a very easy one to establish is doing writing, lots of writing and public speaking about the areas of practice that perhaps you're in. When you position yourself as a thought leader in these spaces where people are getting to know you and you're positioning yourself as a leader and the go-to person for a certain thing in your state, perhaps in your area, in your niche that you've carved out, you become the voice. You become the thought leader, the person who knows all the stuff and the person to go to when a client is having a certain, pain or issue, and that you have the solution for that. And I touched a little bit about networking earlier, but have a networking strategy. A networking strategy meaning that, yes, you want to talk to as many people as possible. However, you need to streamline the verticals that align with your practice being sure to be very well known in those areas so that you are positioned to receive work that's referred from these individuals. So when you're networking, look for other industries that align to your industry and get to know the people in those spaces so that they are likely to refer work to you, knowing that you're now there in that space and you're waiting and able to take that work that they send to you. And I know, Charlotte, this pipeline tracking is a lot of your stuff. So I'm going to let you dive in here on this piece.
And here's why it's important. There are networking rooms that are really fun for me, and I have a lot of fun, and I get really jazzed, gives me energy, but nothing goes into my pipeline at the end, right? So when you look at operations, there's the day-to-day operations, there's the foundation, there's revenue operations, and that is incredibly critical. And that's why we have to track this pipeline. So one of my favorite things when I'm tracking pipeline is, okay, so I went to this bar association event and I handed out my card or my digital card to 100 people and I got 100 cards back and I have a stack of cards on my desk. What happens to them? They just sit there? Probably. Find a way to put it in a pipeline, tag the event. And so when your operations leader or your financial leader at the end of the year is like, whoa, you spent $10,000 on bar events. Wow, you can go into that pipeline and say, yes, but it gave me 100 clients and my average case value is X, meaning I tripled my time investment in my financial investments. And that is why we do pipeline tracking. And I know that gets into your CFO side or your controller. But in revenue operations, I want to know where the leads are coming from. And I had a client once in Florida and they had so many good leads, or not good leads. They had so many leads from other attorneys. And then I went and pulled a report like, oh, these attorneys are giving you the work they don't want. These are the clients that you're chasing for money and can't ever finish out because they're constantly behind. So maybe this is not a good referral source for you. Just because you get a lot of referrals for something or from something doesn't mean they're the right people, the cases you want. I think it was a few slides ago, like marketing position, brand position, ideal client. Put all that in your pipeline so you know, hey, I went to this event and I got 3 leads that were all my ideal client profile. Fantastic. Let's take that room, let's find it again. So having that, we'd say CRM, it just means a place where you track all the information, all the leads that come in, and you can track your referral partners. I that earlier soapbox, just rewind, watch that soapbox again, but track your referral partners. Who's giving you referrals and are they good? All right, I'm done because this is a soapbox item for me.
Now we're going to talk about the intersection of operations and business development. And Charlotte and I will cover some of these areas. Some of this we will double up on. But your intake process as a marketing tool is going to be very important for you to consider because at intake, you're thinking, oh, I'm intaking this person. I'm putting their information in. The work's not done when you intake them because you have to intake them, serve them, and keep them in the firm. You need to keep them to be repeat clients. You need to keep them engaged. And this is where your marketing can come in. When a client first enters your sales funnel and they're at the intake stage, yes, there's some level of work that has been done to get them there. However, in order for you to make them feel or continue to feel that they've made a good decision, remarketing to them is not a bad idea. It's actually a great idea because if they're constantly seeing marketing material, marketing stuff that's in the market on LinkedIn, perhaps it might be email marketing that's coming from you, that helps to reiterate, rehashed, reinforced that they've made the right choice. So the intake is where you're collecting all this information. You're learning stuff about the client, things that they're telling you as they're getting engaged with your business. Use those pieces of information that have been included in the intake process as a part of your marketing, because now you know enough about that client that you're able to send certain materials to those types of clients that have, met certain criteria that perhaps you might have set. They might have had similarities from one group of clients to the other. So use your intake process not only to gather information, but as a tool to market as well. Another reverse engineer way to use it is the information that you're collecting. You will start to see a trend in the data. Um, Perhaps they might be mentioning their pain points to you at intake, and then you can convert those pain points into your marketing messaging and then repurpose that in your LinkedIn, in your email marketing, in your newsletter, whatever materials that are going around and still touching the people who are already engaged and have gone through the intake is still a very smart and strategic way for you to use what you've got at intake to market to the clients and continue marketing to them. Client experience is a growth strategy because as they come in, you know where they're at. You know what perhaps the next step would be after they engage with you, they initially engage with you. So now you know that you can now push them to whatever the next thing is within your practice. And if it doesn't materialize perhaps right away, or perhaps there's no other step to move to, you can still use that client opportunity, that client experience that they have had, to then refer them to another attorney for perhaps something else that they need. So how that's related to growth is when you're referring clients, your existing clients to other clients, you are growing because now that attorney or that firm or whoever you're referring the client to now sees you as a good and viable referral source. So, like Charlotte mentioned earlier, humans want to return the favor, they want to reciprocate. So what's going to happen? That person that you referred work to is now part of your ecosystem, is likely to refer work back to you. So when a client experience from start to finish, perhaps they've done a transaction or whatever the case is with you, don't see that as the end. See it as the beginning of another beginning, because you can refer the client to another attorney, to another perhaps provider, business provider, service provider that might be in your network, which would then be good faith that you would have put out. Response time and conversion rate. I'll let Charlotte talk about this because this falls within her area. So go ahead and chat on that, Charlotte.
Sure. So going back to humanity, if my web page doesn't, if I'm going to a web page and it doesn't load quickly, I move on. If somebody doesn't respond to me in 5 minutes, I've moved on. So it's an exaggeration, but you want to have response time and track it, whether that's having Antonia set up an auto email. Hey, thanks for reaching out. Here's this link to schedule a consultation. So they have an immediate response. We're humans. We like instant gratification. It feels good. I think the term is dopamining, like looking for some dopamine. We want that. And then the better your response time, and not just the Autobot, but a human following up on that Autobot, is going to increase your conversion rates. And when we have this all tracked in our CRM, it's easy for us to just move through. I'm going to go fast because I know we're getting close on time because I went on soapboxes. And then looking at your pricing models and positioning, are you flat rate? Are you hourly? Are you contingency? Do you get to have a evergreen retainer? Are you going to be chasing bills? These are things that we really want to discuss, not only with bar regulations, what we're allowed to do, but also what is best for your firm. And if it is contingency, what percentage? And if it is hourly, where are you getting that data? What made you decide that? That's how we make the decisions for growth. That's how I build systems that are going to scale with client demand. Because if we work the system, you're going to have slow growth beginning, and then it's like a hockey stick. It's going to swoop up. And if you don't have systems at scale, when all those new clients come in, it's going to feel like chaos. If you have the systems, you are built to increase demand, so long as you look out for these common mistakes. The biggest one I see is that the owner touches everything, which creates a bottleneck. Oh, before you send that to the client, let me just. Or I had a client once who overbuilt their infrastructure. Oh, well, I use this app for this, and this app for that, and this app for this. And I'm like, this app does all three. Get rid of it. It will save you time and money and memory space for all those passwords. So don't overbuild the infrastructure. I know at soapboxes, it feels like I'm going to do that. I like simple, clean lines. Don't get the cheapest system. It's not going to track, it's not going to give you the data. Find the right system and kind of, I call it right sizing, and track your finances. Oh, I'm just going to tap my card. And it's so easy. I'm going to tap my card and pay. I'm going to tap my phone and pay. Track where you're spending so we can track where it's paying you back. And then I used to be in HR, poor onboarding employees, onboarding clients. They said they want to work with you. That doesn't mean it's a done deal. They gave you the money, still doesn't mean it's a done deal. Their experience is what grows your firm later. So if the onboarding and the intake is seamless and painless, they're more likely to give you that Google review, tell their friend. And again, people don't usually call their lawyers when it is a bright, sunny day. Something went wrong. Well, I just realized I'm human. I need to trust. I just realized I don't like my spouse. Let's fix that. I just realized I was in a car accident. Like, you guys get a phone call when something either wonderful or terrible happens. So just be prepared for that. What about for business development?
Yeah, so some of the things that are mentioned here are items that I mentioned before. For example, waiting for clients to appear. Do not wait for clients to appear. You have to be proactive and really coming up with a system on how you are going to get clients to come in the door and how you develop the business, how you develop relationships. So do not wait for clients to appear. Come up with a plan, a strategy that you are going to implement so that you're able to have a consistent flow of clients. No clear niche or area of practice. I talked about that as well earlier. Do not go for the generalist. Instead, niche down to what area of focus you're going to be in. Get very crystal clear about that and be present in that area. Inconsistent visibility of like being present here, but then waiting another 90 days before you show up again. That is not going to make the mark. That's not going to help you. You need to consistently show up on an ongoing basis wherever you decide to show up, wherever you feel is the best place for you to be in terms of social, speaking, writing, whatever. It has to be consistent. It can't be a one and done or a one here and then a 3 months later or anything like that. Then no relationship strategy is going to be your biggest downfall if you do not connect and build relationships. Without relationships, your firm really doesn't exist. So be sure to have a relationship strategy in place because that is perhaps one of the biggest mistakes you can make in starting a law practice is not having a relationship strategy. Now I am going to open up the floor for questions. If anybody has questions, of course, if you have questions, you can share them here. If not, you are welcome to reach out to Charlotte and I. Like I mentioned before, we've included our contact details at the start of the webinar, and I will pop them up here again for you. But if you have questions, I'll let you go ahead and send those in now. Sure. In the interest of time, I'll give like a minute or so. If not, then the QR codes that are here, as well as the details that are on the left of our direct contact information, will allow the contacts to send through the questions. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. So I will allow just like 5 more seconds. Perhaps you can take a picture of this slide. Like I said, you are more than welcome to reach out to either Charlotte or myself to ask any questions, or perhaps if you want to have a consultation to talk about the new program, the Build Your Practice Blueprint program, feel free to scan the QR codes to book a spot in my calendar and we can have a one-on-one to talk about that. Or if you wanted to talk to Charlotte about something, you're welcome to as well. This recording is going to be circulated so that you can replay, watch it again. And like I said, if you have questions, you are welcome to send them our way. So thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you being here. And thank you so much, Charlotte, as well, for co-hosting the webinar today. The information that you gave was very insightful, and I am sure that our audience found it very, very useful.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, you're welcome. Well, with that, we're going to end the webinar there. Thank you so much again, and we hope to see you again soon.
All right, I'm going to click enter backstage.